Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. I'm your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. Thanks for taking the time to listen or watch. Those of you on YouTube or on Spotify, those folks are seeing this in video. So if you haven't seen the video of the show yet, you want to go to YouTube or you want to go to Spotify where you can see the video equivalent, which is going to come in handy today. I'm going back to the well. We're going to revisit the Talk Circuit series again. I found a few more talks that I have not shared that some people may not have seen when they were delivered, and they are podcast worthy. So I'm going to show them. I'm going to share them. That's been part of the mindset behind this. Today is a little different because I'm going to share a talk that's based on a topic that I have covered on the podcast before, the UX cycle of excellence. The difference is that some people have heard or they've seen the talk maybe, or they heard the podcast where I talked about the UX cycle of excellence, but they have not. It's worth sharing here. I thought that I had shared this talk before, but I found out I did not. This talk is from 2022 for the folks in Berlin. There was a UX healthcare conference in Berlin back 3 years ago, roughly. And so I thought I'd share it on today. Now, let me give you a little bit of a backstory on this one too. There was a post. I woke up last week. I shared a post where I was talking about where the discipline is going, what's going on in the discipline. And there's a lot of people out there that keep talking about how the work is done. Is it important to talk about how the work is done? Yes, it is. However, when people talk about how the work in UX is done and they glaze over or ignore some of the pitfalls and the challenges, some of the things that are going on in the discipline, basically pretending that these things are not happening and basically giving the perpetrators the license to go out and do these things. We got to stand up against people who are the posers, the retrofits, the upstarts, the trends of bad bosses, the trends of people who are committing to UX theater with no interest in actually developing their skill, building their acumen and the discipline. So that's what I do on this show. I take the time to do that. And I did a post about that. And somebody came along, they said, well, what can we do to take this forward? What is your suggestion? How can we address this? And I actually, frankly, I became pretty incensed. Why did I become incensed? Because I talk about how to do it all the time. When somebody asks a question, as if the answer to the question is something that you have never covered before or never addressed or don't have any thoughts on, frankly, that's an act of gaslighting. I talk about how to go forward in the discipline all the time, and I thought about this topic, the UX cycle of excellence. So this is dedicated to all those people out there who act like I don't know how to get better, but I teach it. Ton of universities. I mentor people all over the world. I have been teaching and have been raising people up. I help people to go forward in the discipline all the time. And I talk about how to go forward, but I also talk about the crimes that are taking place in this discipline that need to stop. And the people who say things like that, they don't talk about it. And they have a lot of people who follow them because they talk about the cotton candy and the unicorns and all those kind of warm and fluffy things. They don't keep it real. You have to keep it real. We're talking to adults. If we're talking to adults, we can keep it real and nobody should get upset. But that's not what's happening, is it? So at any rate, that's the backstory. I thought I'd share this when I found out that I had never shared an actual talk. And I've delivered this talk multiple times. When I realized that I'd never delivered this talk before, I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and get this out there. It's funny if people say that I'm not taking this forward and I'm not providing solutions, that lets you know that they don't really pay attention to any of my content and they are drinking Kool-Aid themselves and they're trying to really propose that other people drink Kool-Aid. No Kool-Aid here, folks. We're keeping it real. All right. That's the story. Let's get into it. Here's a talk from 2022 from the UX Healthcare Berlin Conference where I talk about the UX cycle of excellence. If you follow this, and this is for anybody in the discipline, no matter where you are in your journey, this will help you to manage your career. Ready? Let's get into it, shall we?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Well, it's good evening for you folks there. It's morning for me. I just got up not that long ago. So I'm here talking to you today from Southfield, Michigan in the USA. So welcome. I know you've had a fantastic event so far. And so my goal, as always is the case, is to bring you something of value that's going to help vault you forward in your journey when it comes to user experience. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what I call the UX cycle of excellence. And there's a lot of really jumping off slides. Won't be a lot for you to read, but a lot for you to hear. These references for this talk are actually online today, and I'll make the presentation available so people can get it through Theo as well. But I talk about this a lot in different circles, mainly because there's some things that we need to do. A lot of people want to get into UX, but just as is the case with a lot of other, how can I call it, professional career tracks, you can't just jump in. There are some things that need to be done in order to make it optimal. So that's what we want to talk to you about. I'll break this down as we go. So let's get into the topic. So as mentioned, I mean, if you're at this talk today, you're either in UX or you're thinking about it. When it comes to getting into UX, getting into it and getting a job is one thing. The question comes up, even for people who've been in UX for 2-3 years, as many as 7 or 8 years, I've heard people bring up the topic that I'm going to be talking to you about today. It's like, once you're in it, where do I go from here? What do I do? How do I grow? What can I do to help manage my career? I mean, I've got the job, I'm doing the work, but what's next? And again, there are people I've seen who've been in it for a decade and are still asking this question because a lot of people don't really talk about it. Again, I work in academia, I educate people, and even people who have a master's degree find themselves asking the same question because it's sort of an enigma. People just don't know what to do or where to go. I want to give you some answers about this today, and I want to talk to you briefly about what I call the UX cycle of excellence. And what it is basically is a 7-step approach that you can use to help manage your own, what I call, personal UX maturity. You have organizational UX maturity. We know about that. Most of us do. A lot of us do. And if you don't, well, you just heard about it. So now you've heard about it. But UX maturity has to do with the company, how the company is operating, how the organization is operating, how well UX is received in the company, how much UX is involved, how early UX is involved, how much buy-in and support do you have from leadership, how are the projects in that company run, is UX even involved to the point where we can make the appropriate impact? Those things speak to UX maturity. That's not all inclusive, but those are a lot of aspects associated with corporate UX maturity. But then you have something you never hear anybody talk about, which is why I've started talking about it, and I'm going to be doing a workshop on it in the not too distant future. You have what we call personal UX maturity, because the organization has UX maturity, but no matter where the organization's UX maturity is, there's you, there's me, there's your cohorts, there's your team members. And every individual has a different level of personal UX maturity. Just as organizational UX maturity there needs to be a sense of awareness. There needs to be someone who is deliberately managing the UX maturity. And if nobody is doing it, then it's just driving itself. And that's not a good thing. So with personal UX maturity, it's the same thing. In order to manage our direction, in order to have our hands on the steering wheel of the trajectory of our own personal growth, maturity, and the direction that we're headed, we have to be deliberate. We need to know. So I've put together these guidelines to help us get there. And many of you're going to recognize some things here that you're going to see these things. You go, wow, I need to double back. That's okay. think when we're trying to grow ourselves and manage ourselves, just as we are with our work, we need to be iterative. So, but we'll get to that. Step 1, properly define the discipline. Step number 2, and we'll speak to each one of these individually today, but I want to give you the overview. Step 2, you need to embrace UX's foundational tenets. Step number 3, evaluate your current state. Where are you today? What do you have a solid grasp on? Where are your opportunities for growth? Which leads us into step 4. When you evaluate your current state, eventually you identify knowledge and skill gaps. Where can I grow? You know what? I know about this, but I don't know as much as I think I need to know. That is critical because it's at that step 4 that you can start to plot out your own strategy where you can really start to grow. But again, we'll get to these in more detail in a bit. Step 5, you need to commit to building towards excellence. It's one thing to be a part of UX, but another thing to be excellent at it. Step 6, you have to commit to personal maintenance. And again, I keep wanting to jump into it, but we'll get to each one of these individually. And then step 7 is just be patient with yourself. Be patient. And a lot of people are not. But again, we'll speak to these at length as we go forward. Let's dive into step number 1. Let us properly define the discipline. I'm sure a lot of you have, if you haven't, this hasn't happened to you, it will. When you ever had somebody ask you what UX is and you struggle to define it? Have you ever had somebody tell you what UX is and you find yourself scratching your head and you wonder what in the world is UX? Have you noticed that there are a ton of different attempts? I'm going to call them attempts for now, for the purpose of this talk. It seems like there's 200-300 people trying to, or different definitions that are out there where people are trying to define the discipline. Well, number 1, it's possible for us to have a lot of definitions and they're all still serviceable. It's important for us to know and understand that. There's some bad ones out there. There are some that will lead you down the wrong road. Yes. And we'll talk about some of those for a moment. But know and understand that when you're in UX, and if you have to double back and do this, double back and do it, because a lot of people that are doing UX today are still not properly defining it. If you want to get on the road to excellence, you gotta start here. If UX is not properly defined, again, you'll go down the wrong street. And not only then will it throw you off track, but each one of us is a steward of this discipline. Each one of us impacts the discipline of UX. No matter who you are or what you do, you are impacting someone else's perception of the discipline, and thereby you're impacting the trajectory of the discipline, and you're impacting the UX maturity level at your organization, within your groups, within your teams, things of that nature. So we must properly define the discipline. And here are a few things that we want to touch on before we get to a definition that you can work with if you don't have one. UX's main concern is not aesthetics. I mean, we can't talk about what UX is without talking about what it's not, because there's so much misinformation out there. So we're not the people to come in and make it pretty. That's not who we are, even though a lot of people think we are. That's not who we are. UX is not UI. Any of you familiar with me, you know how loud I am about this. There is no such thing as UI/UX. There is no such thing as UX UI. Absolutely no such thing. So we need to know and understand that on today. UX is not just one thing. And you'll find out shortly what I mean by that. UX is not a mindset. A lot of people actually refer to UX as being a mindset, and it's more than a mindset, way more than a mindset. Here's one that's really, really, really critical. UX is not design thinking, and design thinking has been taking over UX a lot. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. If you want more on that, I did a talk called Design Processes Are Overrated. You'll check that out. You'll get my download on UX or design thinking as it relates to UX. But that's important there. UX is not UX if it does not include actual insights from users. UX is what it is because of the users and the data that we get from them. And it's about the users, the user needs, the business needs, and we operate, we're limited based on the constraints. So we find the sweet spot between the three. So these are things that if you're going to flourish in UX, we need to know these things today. Want a definition? UX refers to the set of methods and techniques, as mentioned, used to find the sweet spot between user goals, business goals, and various types of constraints. So I got ahead of myself a little bit mentioning that, but got to find the sweet spot between the three. And there's a whole host of methods. So this is what it takes to properly define the discipline. And I'll give you a broader look at the discipline from a very, I'll say a detailed perspective in just a moment. Step number 2, make sure you embrace UX's foundational tenets. And now people would say, well, what are UX's foundational tenets? Well, there are certain aspects, as just mentioned. UX is about using various methodologies to drive toward the sweet spot. When you look at the foundational tenets, they happen to be heuristics and usability, information architecture, research, UX research, and interface and interaction design. That's where UI lives. So these are the foundational tenets of the discipline. If you're going to thrive, and you might be a specialist, and by the way, there were no specializations in UX prior to 2011, 2012. We were all UX architects, UX designers, information architects, things of that nature. And we would do more than what our title always said that we did. It wasn't until later that the specializations came about. What's happening with the specializations, though, is that people are focusing on a specialization, but they don't have a broader understanding of the discipline. And as a result of that, because the UX generalist has become sort of like this thing that's in the weeds somewhere where you don't find a lot of people that are operating as a UX generalist. These things are critical to understand that when you specialize, if you want to be a better specialist, you need to have a broader understanding of the discipline. So again, when you embrace the foundational tenets, no matter what it is your job might be, when you embrace the foundational tenets, that's going to put you on the track to excellence. For example, if you are a UX researcher, your ability to optimize when it comes to UX researcher, if you don't understand information architecture, if you don't understand heuristics and usability, if you don't understand interaction design principles, that's going to limit you when it comes to your ability to thrive as a researcher. I can't tell you how many people I've encountered in my career who want to focus on research but don't understand heuristics, and then they end up testing things that are already heuristically proven. And just because heuristics exist, proven principles, best practices, common conventions, just because those things exist doesn't mean that you don't have to research them. But the way you research them is different when you understand that what you're trying to test is actually a heuristic. And building UX maturity levels is highly dependent upon how well the organization and the team is grounded in heuristics. So you can impact what you're doing from a research perspective the more you know about the other tenets within the discipline. You don't just, it is called UX research, for God's sake. It's UX research. So you come in and you understand UX, but you focus on research. And when you do it that way, you're going to be better off. A lot of people are coming in today. They're going straight to UX research because they think they can. And they don't realize that they're actually at a gross disadvantage. If you want to be better at whatever your specialization is, understand UX from a broad perspective, and you'll be better off for it. Your teams will be better off for it. Your users will be better off for it. Your organization, your team will be better off for it. Number 3, now that we've properly defined what UX is, when you have made it a point to commit to understanding the foundational tenets of UX, now it's time to look at you. It's time to look at self. And I didn't spend a lot of time on that illustration, but that illustration, which I usually show to people just to give them an understanding of how big UX really is. If you notice, and again, you'll get a copy of this, when you have the 4 pillars, it's what I call them, then there were a lot of other methods and methodologies sprinkled throughout the illustration. And this is what I do in the workshop. I have people pick elements on that illustration to evaluate themselves on. And not only do they evaluate themselves on it, but because it's real easy to say, hey, on the scale of 1 to 10, from a Likert perspective, I give myself an 8 on that. And people will randomly do something like that when it comes to self-evaluation. That's not how I recommend you do it. To try to eliminate bias and to try to drive as much objectivity in the evaluation process as possible, I highly recommend that you break it down into segments. You want to evaluate yourself from how familiar are you with it? How good are you at practicing it? How much have you practiced it? These types of things. So when you break down your evaluation into more rudimentary or from a more granular perspective, and you only give yourself X number of points for that, I'm not going to break the whole thing down here, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. You have to break down that evaluation into segments and then look at it from that perspective, and you limit yourself. Well, I'm familiar with it. Well, how familiar are you with the concept of semiotics, for example? If you've never heard that before, if you never worked with semiotics, if you never found yourself diving into semiotics, then, and I'm purposely not defining it here, then that would be a 0. You can only give yourself up to 2.5 points for any one of the different areas. I divide the evaluation into 4 segments. That way you can't just say, I'm going to give myself a 9, and you just do it flippantly and you do it whimsically. That's not good. It is critical that you evaluate yourself accurately. It's critical that you evaluate yourself as objectively as possible. Because remember, we're talking about managing your personal UX maturity. So if we're doing that, that means that you need to be as accurate as possible, because if you're inaccurate, when you go to try to manage yourself or you try to prescribe methods to grow in the area of semiotics, for example, if your assessment is inaccurate, you're not going to be able to properly strategize on how to grow yourself in that given area. So you never heard of semiotics? On the scale of 0 to 2.5, you got to give yourself a 0. If you've heard it, but you never really applied yourself to it or never done any work concerning that, you might give yourself maybe a 0.5 or maybe a 1 because you've heard of it. But just because you've never really applied yourself to it, then you've got to limit yourself, and then that's going to pan out in your best interest. So again, just a little highlight. We're not getting into that in detail today, but trying to give you an idea as to what you have to do in order to evaluate yourself. And there's so many topics in UX that is practically limitless, especially when you look at the time that goes into it. So you want to be real careful about how you evaluate yourself. You want to be as honest as you possibly can, and that's key to achieving goals. As you evaluate yourself, you're going to be able to see knowledge and skill gaps, looking at the semiotics example that I just mentioned. Okay, I've never heard of it. I've never really applied it. I had to look up a definition of it. Yes, that's fine. You can look up a definition of it to see and to help with the self-eval. When you do that, you want to make it a point that you say, okay, I know it or I don't know it. This is something I want to know or I need to know more about. And I also recommend at this point, how would I use this in my current job? What could I do? How could this apply when it comes to helping me in my current UX practice? You want to make sure that you tie this thing that you're learning to your current state. The presentation that just took place, and the person was talking about the metaverse. How much do you know about the metaverse? Are you well versed in it? Do you just know what it is, but you never really done anything with it? Maybe this is an area for personal growth. Is it something that is going to be applicable to your current job? These are the types of things that are critical for us to know and understand. And we want to factor these things in when it comes to identifying our knowledge and skill gaps and it's going to help to drive our success. And we do this for every single solitary topic. If this sounds like a lot of work, it is. UX is a lot of work. A lot of people are coming into UX today because they've been told that it's easy. Folks, there is pure UX, what I call pure UX, and there is the cult of UX. Pure UX takes work. Pure UX brings value. Pure UX requires skill and acumen building on the behalf of those who are doing the work. The cult of UX requires none of those things. It is easy because you're not doing anything. So, but if you want to grow when it comes to pure UX, it is going to take some work. It is going to take some attention. It is going to take deliberation, but it pays off. So let's be committed to doing that today. Once you've done all these things, the next thing is you've got to start building toward excellence. And I've already sort of addressed this a bit. The strategy that you need to embrace. How are you going to make things better? This is going to involve something that we call a personalized learning network, or PLN. What podcast can I tap into? What are the good sources of information? And folks, I said this a little bit, I alluded to it. There was no misinformation in UX prior to 2011. Today, it's everywhere. So when you're trying to build toward excellence, you're not going to be able to be any better than the quality and the reliability of the resources that you tap into. So whether it's books, I personally have a ton of book recommendation lists out on Medium. I have educational resources that I post out to Medium. Medium itself is a cesspool in general, but there's some gold out there. It's like the gold rush. You run out for the gold rush. Some people find gold, some people find pyrite or fool's gold. And the sad thing is that fool's gold actually contains some gold in it, but it looks like gold and it's not. There is a gold rush of information in the world of UX today. And the more you build, the more you drive towards excellence, the more you build a filter. And the more you build a filter, you'll be more selective about what you partake of, and it'll help guard you against what's going on with regard to misinformation today. But make sure that you are ready to build towards excellence, put together a sound strategy so that you can truly get better at what you do. And then you become an asset to yourself, your team, the organization, your users, the discipline at large. All of these things are dependent upon what we do at this step. After that, this is when iteration comes in. We have to personally and deliberately commit to personal maintenance. You don't just grow and arrive. People are spreading this mindset that you can learn everything you need to know about UX in 6 months. Or, I mean, you're not going to learn. We will never, I have never, nobody is going to learn everything there is to know about UX. Let me borrow from the previous speaker again. How much did you know about the metaverse before that person got up to speak? How much do we know about the metaverse as it pertains to UX today? What we know about UX and the metaverse today is nothing compared to what we're going to know in 3, 4, 5 years. And everything that we're doing in UX is continuously expanding and growing. The form factors are changing. How we apply heuristics, how we apply the Bruce Tognazini's interaction design principles changes because we're interacting with different things. We're interacting at different speeds. We're interacting through different mechanisms, through different modes, through different form factors. So because of these things will always change. And we always, even the areas that we're sound in, we can always be better. So we have to commit to personal maintenance. And as I always say, when you get involved in UX, there is a commitment, I should say, to lifelong learning. So when you're always ready to learn, it's always going to have you on this track where you're engaged in personal maintenance. And personally, something that I do that I'll mention here, I like going and being exposed even to topics that I feel that I really, really know. And I will go in and like forget what you know in the moment, attend this talk like you don't know anything about it. And you'd be surprised how much you learn, even when you really know the topic, when you go in just deciding, okay, I don't know anything. Let me sit, let me listen, let me be quiet, let me take this in. and you take the information in, and you'll find that you'll pick up 2 or 3 things that sharpen your saw a little bit. That's what we want to be able to do. But remember, sort of doubling back to point 5, I said this on social media recently, don't be a sponge. And somebody will say, well, isn't a sponge good? In general, being a sponge means that we soak everything up. The problem with a sponge is it soaks up everything. Sponges are not discriminatory in what they choose to absorb. We need to be a selective sponge. We need to have a filter. We don't want to just absorb something because it's liquid. We want to absorb it because we're supposed to be absorbing it. Sponges absorb water. It shouldn't be absorbing poison. It shouldn't, but if it's liquid form, it's going to absorb it. It shouldn't be absorbing antifreeze. It shouldn't be absorbing, unless you're trying to get antifreeze up, but why would you get antifreeze up with a sponge? So I think you get the metaphor. We want to be careful of what we absorb. So again, the more you drive toward excellence, the stronger your filter will get, the more selective you get, and the safer you will be, and the safer the people that listen to you will be. Number 7, and it might seem like this is, why are we even talking about this? People they're not patient with themselves. And when you're not patient with yourself and you want things to happen too fast, you're setting yourself up for failure. Please, please, please be patient with yourself. Don't expect too much out of yourself too soon. Don't demand too much out of yourself. Don't be unrealistic in your personal expectations, and give yourself a chance to grow. If you hear a presentation and you don't get it, or you go to a class and you're might be struggling with grasping the concept, walk away from it, take a step back, go for a walk, come back. You'd be surprised that just that being patient will cause yourself to sort of settle from a cognitive perspective, and you'll put yourself in a better position to absorb or digest and apply what it is that you're learning. But a lot of people today have that microwavable mindset where they're trying to absorb things or do things or get somewhere too fast. And sometimes you think you got it too fast and you really didn't. And if you think you're somewhere that you're not, I mean, if you're on a road trip from Utah to New York and you think you're in New York, but you're actually in Kansas, you're simply not there yet. So we want to be realistic about things, and we want to be very patient, very deliberate. And you'll find that when you take your time, when you opt into the slower, more deliberate path, you'll find that your experiences are more long lasting. The impact of those experiences are more long lasting, as opposed to trying to microwave everything, rising up through the ranks too fast. These things, if you're rising up too fast, you're doing things too fast, you're missing something, and something is terribly wrong, and it's going to bite you when you least expect it, and it's not going to be kind when it does. So please be deliberate and be patient with yourself. It's worth its weight in gold. So folks, that is the UX cycle of excellence. I hope you got some takeaways here. Step 1, properly define the discipline. Step 2, embrace UX's foundational tenets. Step 3, evaluate your current state in UX, know who you are, identify your knowledge and skill gaps. Step 4, know what you know what you don't know. One of the best things you can ever do is know what you don't know. And a lot of people don't know what they don't know, so they're vulnerable. We don't want to be those people. If you're there today, you can always transition out of it, no problem. Step 5, make sure you build towards excellence. Always make it a point to strive to excel at what you do. Don't be satisfied with being a number in this age of participation trophies. Don't be satisfied with just being counted as being a part of something. Make sure to be somebody that's helping to drive something, and you'll get more satisfaction out of what you do, and everybody else will benefit. Step 5, make sure that you build towards excellence. Did I just say that again? I don't know. I'll repeat it again if I did. Build towards excellence. So step 6, commit to personal maintenance. You want to make it a point that you are always taking a look at what you can do better. Make it a point that you're being iterative about your own personal development. I'd even challenge you to look at things that you think you know and check them. I mean, you have a car, you take it in. If you have an automobile, you take it in to get a checkup. And they may find something wrong, they may not. we have to take this same type of approach with ourselves. So if we commit to personal maintenance, we're making sure that we're always looking at where we are, how well we're doing, what we can grow in, or what we're doing well in and we're thriving in, then maybe you become a thought leader in that area. Great. Go and help build somebody else. That's how we get there. Instead of going from skipping all these steps. And some people today, they become, because being a thought leader is embedded in step 6, really. Some people jump straight there and they only have 2 or 3 months of experience. Not only are they not doing us a favor, they're not doing themselves a favor, they're not doing the discipline a favor. No, let's go through these steps. And then step 7, again, be patient with yourself, because it does take time to achieve mastery. It does take time to become someone who's capable of being a thought leader. It takes time to arrive at being a senior in the discipline. And yes, it does take a while. You're not a senior if you've only been doing it for 2 years. Not a thing. That's what they told you, and that's the title they gave you. But that's truthfully, you're not there yet. And you're not going to achieve excellence, especially if you think you're somewhere that you're not. Yeah, it's not going to help. So be patient with yourself. Be patient as you grow, and you and everyone else will be the better for it. So,
all right. Did it make sense? The UX cycle of excellence is a framework that a person can use to manage their own UX career. You learn what the foundation of the discipline is. You learn the fundamentals. You define the discipline the right way. And when we all agree on that, that gives everybody the same foundation. We all go forward. Now, we become a more unified bunch. We become a more stable bunch. We become a more solid bunch that's able to properly represent who we are, especially as we continue to grow and commit to lifelong learning, so that we know what UX is, know how to carry ourselves, know how to represent the discipline, and know how to execute those fundamentals of the discipline to keep bringing value. This is something that a lot of people need. A lot of people don't do. People come into UX, they don't learn what the definition of UX is. They don't learn the fundamentals. As a matter of fact, a lot of people fight against the fundamentals today. So these types of things are key. And also, please be patient with yourself as you grow. You're not going to grow overnight. A lot of people try to say that you can. They say you can learn everything in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. They go from nothing to senior in a year. They go from nothing to lead in 2 or 3 years. That's actually not possible. And the people that think they're doing it, and the people that are getting titles that imply that they're doing it, when it comes to actually executing, they don't really do it. And they have this sense, a lot of those people have this sense of they like to call it imposter syndrome, but they have a sense of self-doubt that couple that with an inferiority complex that makes it really dangerous to interact with them, because they're always afraid. They're always on edge. They're always anxious. If you follow an approach that I'm talking about here in the UX cycle of excellence, it actually takes care of all those things. You'll have a better understanding of who you are. You won't get offended when you find out that you don't know something. You just go out and you learn it. These things are the types of things that we need to be grounded in from a mentality perspective, from a framework perspective, so that we can not only be what we ought to be in UX, but we'll be able to help all those around us to do the same things, and it'll make it easier for us to cross-pollinate, to engage with one another, which we sorely need in UX today. But I hope you got a lot out of that. You can go out to see the blog post on uxuncensored.medium.com. You can go and download that image. You can go to images.google.com and search for that, for UX Cycle of Excellence Darren Hood, and you'll find that image with all the steps on it. And then take it, look at it, and hey, get to work. Get to work. I still have to do it. I've been doing this work for 30 years. I still have to do it. You never outgrow it. We never arrive. Keep those things in mind. Gonna highlight one of the items on the kaizentees.com website before we wrap up today. One of our mugs, asking someone what they want or like is not UX research. Take that to a meeting. Put that on your desk and put your coffee in it. Again, just a fun way to get the message out. We've got some new stuff also that's coming. I'm also going to start rolling out some collections. So you see the I Love Pure UX t-shirt that I'm wearing here. There's going to be some mugs and some stickers. associated with this. We're going to start putting collections out associated with the different slogans and things of that nature. So be on the lookout for that in the not too distant future. But folks, that's all the time we have for today. We're going to wrap up here. Until next time, this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, wishing everybody all the best. And until next time, happy UXing, everybody.